There we go. So welcome to the Circular Economy and the Resilient Business Share, Reuse, Repurpose Strategies to Unlock Value and Opportunity webinar. I'm Jackie Donaldson, the Hub Coordinator for Green Economy Peterborough. And joining me today is Natalie, on behalf of GreenUp and to support attendees' needs, is Director of Programs Natalie Stevenson. Hi to Natalie. Today's speakers, as you know, we have 4 great speakers. They'll be presenting to you today. That'll be presenting to you today. We have Rob Arkell from Cambium Consulting and Engineering, Sustainability Specialist, who'll provide an overview of what the circular economy is, followed by 3 local business leaders, Scott Murison of Wild Rock Outfitters, Rob Cahill of Cahill's Outerwear, and Norm Lamoth of Woodley Farms, who will each share how they've implemented innovative circular economy and sustainability strategies into their business. So a little bit about Green Economy Peterborough. We're the ones hosting this event, and if you haven't attended one of our events before, don't really know who we are. We are a local program and network that's run by GreenUp to support local business leaders to reduce their environmental impact. Green Economy Peterborough members work through a process to understand and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions while learning and celebrating their successes with each other. We are, while we're a local project of GreenUp, we're connected to 8 hubs across Canada as part of the Green Economy Canada network. And it's a collective of businesses and organizational leaders that recognize the benefits, opportunities, and significance of making the transition to a vibrant, inclusive, low carbon future. Here we all are. Those are our members. Green Economy Peterborough is a membership organization. One of the most important features of Green Economy Peterborough is that we're local. We buy each other's products or services. We are business peers, we're neighbors, we're friends. We see each other around town at events and in parks and on our bikes. And we sometimes work on projects together. It's a great group. In fact, we have quite a few members in attendance today. These organizations are all leaders in their own way, and we call them Green Economy leaders. And they have interesting stories to tell, including some of the experiences you'll hear today. Just a quick note, we have an advisory committee. This group shares their expertise, supports Green Economy Peterborough, and importantly, in our efforts, all our collective efforts to become, for Peterborough to become the most sustainable and innovative community and economy in Ontario. That's part of the PCED, Peterborough Growth Economic Development Strategic Vision. So we appreciate their commitment. So first up, I'd like to introduce you to our first guest, Rob Arkell. He is a sustainability specialist from Cambium Consulting and Engineering, a Green Economy Peterborough member. Rob is a passionate leader in the local circular economy movement who works hard to bring awareness on this topic to our community. Rob will do that now by providing an overview of this innovative strategy. And over to you, Rob.
Great, thanks very much, Jackie. Thanks to GreenUp for all the good work that they do for a lot of years now, and particularly to you for working closely with me to pull this project together. There was a lot of long days and long nights, I think, to make this happen. And thanks to everybody who's taking time with us. All right, this is going to be just scratching the surface type of overview of the circular economy. The fun stuff really we'll get into when Scott and Norm and Rob start to share what they're doing locally, which I love to see those examples. But I'm going to have some props today. I've got a video, so hopefully we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. And I'm going to start off with 3 real quick stories. The first story has to do with this kind of ultra cool, but maybe not so fashionable shirt, but this is a shirt that I purchased from a store called Talese here in Ontario, in Peterborough. And if you're familiar with that store, it's kind of like a value village, so a lot of reused clothing, but some other items as well. So the second story I want to share with you is this barbecue scraper. And why am I showing you a barbecue scraper? Well, I was having a look at this not too long ago, and I realized that the brush piece actually comes off, so it's a cartridge, right? So you have a company called Master Chef that's decided that as opposed to selling it as a single piece like we used to, and then when the bristles kind of wore out, you throw away the whole thing. They figured out a different model, different approach to it, which addresses waste. And the circular economy, as we get into it, you'll understand, is really connected with waste not being waste anymore, right? Waste is a resource. Let's figure out how we bring it back into the economy. And the last piece I wanted to show with you is kind of a personal story with my work at Cambium. This is a polypropylene, so a plastic filter. It's a number 5 plastic. You're familiar with that, and we use this in one of the services we offer, which is to test concrete. So we go to a place that needs their concrete testing, and we fill up a number of these, 4 of them, and take them back to our building. And we have a lab that tests them at certain days through the curing process to make sure that it's curing properly. And why do I tell you about concrete testing? Well, as you can see, there's a split on the side of this, and the way we get the concrete out of these cylinders is we have to slice it down the side, pull out the concrete, which we test. As it turns out, we thought these were being recycled, but when we looked into it a little further, these were actually being pulled from the stream and going to landfill. So that's to the tune of about 12,000 of those cylinders a year. Not a good thing, from a waste point of view, a circular point of view. So I did some digging. I found a local company, local being Ontario based, that actually would take those back from us, and they were able to recycle them. So they were able to overcome the hurdles that the local MRF wasn't able to. Not only that, we went a little further now, and this company has a separate facility that is now going to be producing new cylinders out of the old ones. So for something that we used to have to purchase from an Ontario supplier who got it from the US, from virgin materials, we've actually come up with this way to kind of create our own little circular approach to one of the services that we offer. And I bring those forward as illustrations of some of the different approaches that businesses are taking to circularity. And from that, you can see that there's really two streams in my mind. One is existing businesses such as Cambium, that's finding a different way to do things, that are looking to eliminate waste, to bring materials back into the economy. The other stream are businesses that are kind of coming out, that are specifically focused on a new business model. So this store Talese or Value Village or Vinnie's, these are businesses that are putting resources back into the economy through the reuse model. So 2 types of businesses: existing businesses that are moving towards circularity, and businesses that are strictly focused on or supporting the different circularity business models. And we'll see that as we work through my slides. So just an opening few stories there for you to kind of get you warmed up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen now, so bear with me for a moment. Pull up a few slides. And Jackie, I'll ask you if you can see this okay. And that's not the mode I want. Bear with me. I need to turn off presenter view. Try this again. Give me a moment here. Okay, just having a little difficulty with my slide deck. When I go to share it, it goes onto my other screen, and that's not what I want. Let me try this. Sorry about this, folks.
Rob, if you go to the setup slideshow, I can show you quickly how to.
Oh, that would be helpful there. So we're.
So it's this 6 button along the top. If you go from the right.
All righty. Give me a second here. I'm going to go
go down. No, go down. Yes, that one along the ribbon.
Yep.
So, yep. And then you're going to check browse from individual window.
All right. Thank you. Saved me.
It's a tricky one. It's funny, the default.
There we go. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so really, in my mind, the circular economy is all about what if. It's asking that questions. Scott and Rob and Norm, who are going to speak to you later, they've asked that question themselves in terms of bringing their businesses more into a fashion that avoids waste and is a little more circular. And so you'll see me come back to this a few times today, but really it's that question: what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? You got a number of waste streams on the slide there in front of you. In case you're wondering, what's the relevance of the cars? Well, that's a different kind of waste. It's resources that are underutilized, right? So your average car sits parked about 92 to 95% of the time, right? And yet we all have one or two or more of them. So this will come up again later, but that's where the waste comes in there. So let's go back a little bit and figure out how we talk about how we got to where we are today. So this is the way our current economy kind of operates, this visualization, right? So we start at the beginning, we're extracting resources. Generally, to make stuff, we got to get something from the earth to do it. And then we move into that production phase, distribution, consumption, and then there's that disposal phase. And the reality today, unfortunately, is the vast majority of the goods and the packaging of those goods actually goes to landfill despite our best efforts, right? So most of the stuff is ending up in a landfill somewhere. This is often referred to as the take, make, and waste, or the linear economy, and that's how we're operating now. But we're getting smarter in a lot of ways. I'm going to share a few of those with you now. One of the ways we're getting smarter is that sometimes we get confused and we think that the economy is the be-all and end-all. But the reality is that the economy sits within society, and society sits within the environment. And the economy actually isn't going to function all that well for that long, if we don't have a healthy society and we don't have a healthy environment, right? So as you can see by the stat there, 50% or something of the world's economy depends on nature. We're reliant on a healthy society and environment actually to stay resilient, which is a comment that Jackie made off the top, right? But the challenge is that biodiversity is declining at a faster rate than any other time in human history, right? And that's a result of the way we operate our economy today. And so we're getting smarter in that we understand that this current model is really built on a couple of myths. Myth number one is that there's infinite resources, and there's not. We realize that now. We kind of operate in that fashion, but we are running out of stuff that we need to make stuff. The other myth is at the other end there, where there's the earth has an infinite regenerative capacity, and it does not have. We're actually beyond the limits of the earth, particularly in the Western world. You've probably seen the stats about we're using and we're consuming at the rate of 2 or 3 or more Earths, right? So we're in a bit of a challenging situation where this can't keep going on because we're going to threaten that resiliency. We also have gotten smarter to understand that 80% of biodiversity loss and 50%, almost 50% of greenhouse gas emissions are associated with that extraction and production phase of making stuff, right? So let's look at that a slightly different way. And I'm going to look at this from a value point of view. This is a very cool model called the value hill. And so you can see the same steps here coming up the add value phase. So on the uphill phase, there's that extraction phase and the manufacturing phase. We're adding value all the way along, right? We take something out of the earth, and then as we manufacture it, it becomes more valuable and more valuable and more valuable. Anybody that's in the business field understands the idea of the value chain. So this is the pre-use phase. And then we get to the top here of the hill, and that's where you and I step in and we're using the stuff that's made. We're using the products that are out there on the market. The reality, unfortunately, as mentioned right now, is that all of that value that we've created gets destroyed after that because stuff generally ends up going to landfill, right? So again, we're getting smarter. We're saying, hey, wait a second. Why are we destroying all that value? Isn't there a better way? Isn't there a better approach that we can maintain that value that we've created in order to keep it going a little longer and potentially in perpetuity? And so we've got somebody just with their background speaker on. Maybe you can turn that off. Thank you. Here's some background noise. Maybe somebody's excited about my presentation. Thank you for that. What if? We're back to that question, right? What if there was a different way, right? So, what if we actually designed out the whole idea of waste and pollution? So we took into account what's going to happen at the end of first life right from the beginning, right? And with that step, what if we can keep those products and materials in use for a whole lot longer? Perpetuity is kind of the dream, but what just a whole lot longer would be better, right? And then what if in that whole process we actually build a system that regenerates our natural systems, as opposed to be kind of the distractive and the destructive approach that we use today, right? So really, that whole idea of decoupling economic growth from resource extraction, what if we did that? And if we do that, then what we start to move towards is this more of a circular economy as opposed to this linear economy. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a quick video. I promised a video, and I love this video. It's fast moving. It's got funky music. Listen closely and you'll hear some really good messages come through this, including reference to those 3 principles that I just showed you. But let me play that for you now. And I don't think I clicked the sound button, Jackie, but let me know by a thumbs up or thumbs down if you can hear this.
We live in a world with finite materials.
We are throwing an awful lot of electronics,
plastic, food, carpets, clothing
away. It's a waste of precious materials.
If we could build an economy that would use things rather than use them up, we could build a future that really could work in the long term.
You design the product in a way that
Can be taken apart once the consumer has finished using them.
you remanufacture it and give it out again. You can reduce your production costs hugely if applied correctly.
Instead of garments ending up in landfill,
companies can repurpose it, reuse it, making profit out of their waste.
We take some resources from nature and bring it back in the form of nutrients.
It's very much a natural cycle.
We use 70% less water than conventional agricultural methods.
Our packaging is not a waste, it's something that you can consume and eat.
We redesign everyday products to make them fully recyclable.
We farm as close to nature as is possible.
The H&M Group has set ambitious targets to use 100% sustainably sourced materials.
There is a lot of conversation about not buying clothes, but different models where you can rent clothing.
We develop fully modular headphones that we offer on a subscription basis.
The circular economy itself is inevitable in my view.
it's not one fix. It's about the entire system being redesigned.
This is, to me, the only way to fight climate change, to fight pollution, to fight waste.
This is a business model that stacks up.
Global companies cannot survive in the future without transitioning towards a circular economy. That is a really exciting future.
There was a lot packed into that video. I hope you enjoyed it. And I've had to look at it many times. Every time I look at it, I see something a little different. The video ended with a quote from H&M: "Global companies cannot survive in the future without transitioning to the circular economy." Some of you may know my previous career was actually in shopping center management. And I was at Lansdowne Place for 9 years. And when we scored H&M, that was huge. H&M is a major draw to a shopping center, right? They bring traffic, and that's all about what a shopping center survives on, is bringing traffic. But you know what? They were also known as a purveyor of cheap chic or disposable fashion. The stuff that they made didn't really last all that long. You wore it 3 or 4 times, and then you pitched it because it wasn't all that expensive to buy. So for me to see them on this video, it's one of the things that sticks out to me, is to see them, and I looked into it, and they're actually doing some neat work in this space. But to see an existing company move in that direction was pretty significant. Making profit out of their waste was a quote also that came out of it. I don't know if you caught that in that video, and I think the last thing that jumps out of me, which I really like, is the guy that eats his packaging there. I just always get a giggle out of that. But hopefully you enjoyed that. But it's captured some neat things of where we're going. And I'm going to move a little more quickly here, just to make sure that we have enough time for our speakers. But so what I've done here is I've taken that value hill that you see earlier, but I've kind of, as opposed to representing the linear economy, now we're representing the circular economy. So, the same steps coming up that hill, right? Extraction through retail, and we're adding value. But what we're doing then is we're looking at it from a design point of view. Like, within those steps, how do we design to bring materials back into the economy when people are done with them? And that could be at the end of first life, it could be at the end of life, but those are two different things. But how do we design for it? Once we get to the top, it's kind of optimizing the use, right? So how do we make sure that the use is extended for as long as possible by those folks? And you can see some different types of business models or approaches there, product as a service, repair and maintenance, that sort of thing. But it's extending this. And then this is the big difference, right? Like, as opposed to this, the product rolling down the hill and disposing, now we've got a number of options that bring those materials back into the economy. And where the circularity piece comes in is really at this phase, right? So if you're just optimizing use and keeping something going, it's a very small circle, right? By repairing, say, your phone, for example, you kind of keep that phone going. And then as we move down the hierarchy here, this is in terms of impact. So the most minimal impact is your smallest circle. We get down to recycling. You can appreciate recycling requires a lot of energy and additional resources to get it back into the economy. So it's a little more of an impact environmentally and potentially socially than actually just optimizing the use. But these are all steps that can be taken, and you can see how they loop back into the process, right? So recycling loops back in at the manufacturing stage, and remanufacturing loops back in at the assembly stage. So as we move down here, we're creating additional loops to get the items back into the economy. And this is a model that, you know, existing business or new businesses can use to figure out, okay, like, where can I focus to get towards that idea of minimizing waste, bringing waste back into the economy, using waste to generate profit, and to be more circular. And there's 5 business models that come out of it. I won't spend too much time on it, but you saw some of them on that last slide there. But the whole idea of circular supplies, right? So using supplies that are renewable, that come from existing material to put back into your products, recovering resources, so avoiding leakage, keeping things going out of the landfill, extending the life of products through things like repairability or reselling or upgrading, sharing platforms. You know, we're aware of a number of those that are out there now, whether it's the local tool library or Uber or Y-Drive locally, things like that. Those are platforms for sharing existing assets, not addicts. Products as a service is really taking shape. You'd be familiar with this. Originally came out as software, where they moved to a subscription model as opposed to buying the box with your DVDs or your CDs to load it on. Now we just pay a subscription. So we're getting the service and paying for the service as opposed to paying for the product. And you may have seen the gentleman on the headphones there, the Gerard Street headphones. That's their operating model. They don't sell headphones. You actually pay a monthly fee for the use of those headphones. They come back to the company when you're done with them, either to be resold or to be recycled. So it kind of creates that loop that we're looking for. And is this happening now? Absolutely, right? So back to our what if questions, you know, so Patagonia thought, well, what if we actually start to repair some of our stuff and put it back into the market? And they're doing that now, and Scott can attest to that, right? HP, you know, what if we offered our devices, our laptops, as a service? You don't buy it, but you actually pay a subscription fee. Caterpillar, heavy manufacturing, has been doing it for years. They actually remanufacture. They build their cores of their equipment to be remanufactured when their clients are done with it. So end of that first life, right? IKEA, you might be aware, IKEA is taking back their stuff now, and they're either putting it back on the floor if it's in good shape, or they are repairing it and then putting it back on the floor, or they're recycling it. So they've recognized this component of their business as potential to be more circular. And lastly, Nike. You know, why is Nike making shoes that can be taken apart? Well, it's so that they can either be reused or recycled. So just some examples. And again, these are businesses that are existing that have brought circularity into the way they operate. And a couple more quick slides and I'll be wrapped up here, Jackie. But back to that initial slide there where you saw the mountain of clothes and the what if, right? I've talked to you about Vinnie's and places where you get cool shirts like this, but there's a company in Europe that leases their jeans. They actually don't sell them, so you can lease their jeans. And when you're done with it, you can either buy them outright, you give them back. If they're in good shape, they resell them. If not, they recycle them, right? So it's a totally different business model to try and deal with this crazy amount of waste there. You know, Habitat for Humanity, or a company out of Waterloo, Timeless Materials, that deconstructs, taking the stuff back before demolishing it, right? There's a lot of value in this building they're knocking down, but they aren't capturing it. They aren't putting it back into the economy. And I think I'll scoot ahead there and just move on to the speakers. I want to make sure they have enough time. So, you know what? Again, it's about asking that question, what if? And let's hear from Scott and Rob and Norm now about what their what ifs are and how they are and where they got to where they are. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'll hopefully it'll work without too many hiccups. Great. Oops. All right. So my name is Scott Murison from Wild Rock Outfitters in downtown Peterborough. We are a store that sells outdoor clothing and outdoor equipment for cycling, camping, kayaking, etc. Things for having fun in a non-motorized way outside. The outdoors is our passion, and our business model just wouldn't work and won't work without a healthy environment and healthy green space. End of story. And almost, as Rob said, captured in that environment circle that is above our society, or encapsulates our society, which encapsulates our economy. Most business models won't work without an environment. We're a store. What the heck is a store? A store is a box located sometimes on the side of the road somewhere, whether it's online or brick and mortar. It's still just a box that you put stuff in and you hope to sell it. So that is what Wild Rock is when you break it right down. And a while ago, we were like, okay, how do we reduce our carbon footprint? And, you know, reducing our carbon footprint, it would be quite easy. We could just close the store. Wild Rock's carbon footprint would be zero then. Unfortunately, that probably wouldn't change the carbon footprint of Peterborough, because someone would fill our space and people would still buy whatever they were going to buy at Wild Rock. So then we thought about, geez, how do we help here? Or how do we be part of the good force? And that's by displacing bad consumption. So selling products that last a long time, selling less product to more people, and thinking outside the box, basically. So thinking about what we're selling, and then of course looking at our box, our store, and figuring out how to have a building that produces less green, less byproducts that are negative. So we started looking at what we buy. And we really we have so many vendors we can choose from, because some of the reality is that people are keeping things for less time. People are buying more disposable stuff than they were 15, 20 years ago. So we started thinking we can buy better. So we started buying more organic things. So almost all the cotton in our store is organically sourced, because cotton in particular is one of the most pesticide and chemical intensive crops. So going organic that way, we cleaned up that part of our system. Buying recycled products. We have a number of manufacturers. Almost all of the fleece from Patagonia, the North Face, is all recycled PET bottles. So continuing on that way, recycled insulations, we are using that. And then repurposing, buying in a repurposed fashion, in the sense that finding vendors who are using offcuts from other vendors, the scraps for building things, or repurposing things in our own way with our gear swaps, where we give things a second life. Some of the stuff that we've really been looking at reducing are antimicrobials, the PFAS, various chemicals. So looking at what is coming into our building in the way of product, or whether it's a cleaning product that we're using on the floors in our store, or whether it's a product we're going to sell, trying to reduce the footprint on this sense. And that's just a lot of reading labels, and unfortunately saying no to a lot of vendors who make really good product that might be popular, but we're unwilling to sell it because it contains too many products like this in it. Other things we do with running the store is we use Bullfrog Energy. So Bullfrog Energy is basically a large rec system. And in that, this information is a little bit old, but we've saved over 330 tons of CO2 by purchasing our natural gas this way, by purchasing our electricity this way, and fueling our store vehicles this way. Beg your pardon? Oh, okay. So then the other thing we looked at was transportation. Transportation for anything is massive. And we quickly found out that, boy, air transportation is very costly to the planet. So we now prohibit any of our staff or anybody from ordering things on rush order. So we have to think further ahead and not react, because that last minute decision, oh, I want it the next day, I want it faster, more likely pushes it to air transport, definitely pushes it to smaller, less efficient vehicles for that last mile. So if we can get it and we can be without it for a week and it comes on a transport truck, that is far better than a small van. And if we can wait for a week to get it and just plan further ahead and don't need it in the next day, then our vendor's not going to put it on an airplane to get it to us. Same thing goes with outbound services. We will not ship anything using air transport. So if you're buying from wildrock.net online, it will be going by ground. Next day air, the whole Amazon Prime thing is just brutal. That last mile is so costly to the environment. If you wait 3 days and it comes by ground, it is far better for our environment. Just giving you a little bit of idea of air cargo versus ground transport, as in basically diesel trucks, and then rail, diesel trains, and then maritime shipping in the cost per ton. We align ourselves with the best companies. What we do is resell, so we don't manufacture anything here. So we have a choice to carry a product or not carry a vendor. So we've aligned ourselves. One of our biggest vendors is Patagonia. And the reason I'm bringing these 4 companies, that's not saying that they're our biggest 4, it's not saying they're the best 4, but it's 4 companies that we deal with that are offering 4 very different views on how to lower their impact or participate in the circular economy. Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, the owner there, who owned 100% of the shares, donated 100% of his stock to a Patagonia Purpose Trust. So he gave his company away, and now all dividends from that company are now being used for environmental causes. So 100% of the profit of Patagonia is going back in. And as they say, they made Patagonia's shareholder the earth. FIG is a small Montreal company that does a really great job. And we've talked about transportation. Well, this stuff, 30% of it is actually made in Canada. Most of the materials are sourced in Canada. And they do a great Second Life program where they are reusing their scraps into making different products, and also buying scraps from other companies in Montreal to make in different new programs. They too have seen the problems with much of the clothing world, the waterproofing treatments, the non-stick treatments. Any of these things are pretty nasty for the environment. So they have removed any of the PFAS from their products. So why we like these guys? Small, local, as in Montreal. So this company is not based out of the United States. It's not based in Europe or Asia. Transportation clearly for that 30% is much less than if we're buying it from Patagonia. And they too are very on board with the ethics of producing clean clothing. Cotopaxi is another one. It came out of Central America, but they are using in large industrial ways in China the scraps from other manufacturers to make their colorful packs. So they don't offer, you can't order a certain color of backpack from these guys because they're all a bit of random, made out of different colors. And then they too are a member of the 1% for the planet, which means 1% of their gross sales. So even if they don't make any money, even if they have a loss, they're still donating 1% of their sales to the planet, which is where Patagonia started with 1%, and now they are 100% of profit. The North Face is a very large American company, and the owner, Doug Tompkins, has done a very different thing. He's passed away now, so it's his wife and their foundation. But they have purchased, with the profits of the North Face, over 11 million acres in Chile and Peru, and have donated it all to parks. So they are helping save the planet by literally protecting land. So they also, within the company, do a great job of minimizing waste, championing cyclability. So they have a whole clothing line that is called Cyclability, because it is repurposed already and has an avenue, just as Rob said, about getting it back into the chain so the next consumer can look after it. Just 4 companies that we deal with that do an exceptional job. But it takes a company making a decision, and sometimes the decision means, as a company, you're making less money. And my partners here are comfortable with that choice. For 15 years, we ran European cycling tours, and it was about 1/5 of the sales or 1/6 of the sales of the company. So we're talking, at one point, it was $750,000 a year. And when we did an audit on our carbon footprint, just the flights of our guides, not even the flights of our clients that we were sending overseas, just the guides, the people who are working for Wild Rock, our employees, the carbon footprint of those flights surpassed everything else we did in our business, all our heating, all our lighting, all our transportation. And so we were just when that was brought to our attention, we made the hard decision to stop offering these tours. We just can't be sticking people in aluminum cylinders and shipping them overseas. So we saw our sales decline by that much money, and that part of our business collapse. But difficult decision, but a good decision that we all supported and had large buy-in from our staff. Still leaves a sad spot in my life because I love leading cycling trips and I loved visiting all those places. But those are the decisions that in business you have to make sometimes if we're going to still be in business in another 30 years. One of the things that we do right now is we do gear swaps twice a year where we sell other people's gear. So people can bring in their used gear, and we offer a space. They can take 100% store credit or 80% cash back, and we make it easy for people to get their old equipment that they're finished with a second life in there. So we have one coming up in October, and we do another one in the spring for bicycles and things like that to, again, get a second life into this gear. And we're looking to expand on this idea because repurposing new old gear with life still left in it is super important, whether it's get to a person who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford new gear so they can get out there and enjoy the outdoors, or just to give the gear another chance. So the choice is, if you own a company or you choose to work for a company, you probably have some power here. And sometimes the choice will cost you your personal lifestyle. We all have to take a lower standard of living over these next 20 years because clearly the standard of living we are enjoying now is too much for our planet to sustain. So we will have to figure out how to survive with less. And it's great that Rob and Green Up are bringing in programs like this where we can find some ideas where it won't be such a shock, because at some time we'll be living with a lot less because Mother Nature shuts us off. So maybe we should do it on purpose now. Thank you very much. I hope we get to chat later on after this, and I'll pass the baton now.
Next, we have Rob Cahill of Cahill's Outerwear. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Scott.
All right, unmute. All right, well, thanks, Jackie, and thanks, Rob, for the invitation to speak here today to the group. I know Rob saw me present our new business model at a Kawartha Family Business Group meeting, and we've had a couple of great chats, and it's something that I've always been very keen on. In fact, I'll take you through my presentation a bit, but I was always the tree hugger in my group, knowing a little bit more and spending a little bit more time out in the land and with people that really live off of the land. And that's sort of part of the journey. But the big part is really about how is that relevant today and how is it relevant to this discussion. So I will share my screen now and share. Am I sharing?
I can share yours if you like. I've got it in front of me.
Yeah, can I control it?
No.
Okay. I had it there just a second ago. Let's see, share screen. It says desktop, but it's got a
Rob, you can just tell Jackie to forward the slide when you do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to try that?
Okay, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
if that's not working, then we'll just pull it up. So I've got a bunch here. Just stay on that trigger there, Jackie.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
So you're welcome to start.
Okay, so this is it's quite a journey, and in fact my story, so we can go on to the second slide there. My story has really been circular in itself in the whole world. So I think to get you to where we are today, I'm gonna have to take you on a little bit of my journey. And here, you know, my father started this company as a master furrier in 1977, and of course that was a time when furs were, of course, the best winter protection you had from then all the way back to the beginning of time. And we were retailers, we were tailors, seamstresses, and we made our own coats, and a lot of it out of locally harvested furs. So we were supporting many different folks around the community, including from Curve Lake and Hiawatha and out in the farm fields around Peterborough. But we've also sold lots of different cloth coats, leather coats. Almost everything that we've sold has been made in Canada, and that it almost continues today, which is really quite nice. But also different fashions, different accessories. But of course, we're most known for that core product of fur, which, you know, brings its own little story. So I'm going to try and take you through how I've sort of woven through that and make it relevant to today. So in my path, my brother and I learned our skill from our father. In fact, he made fur coats in the basement of the house when we were kids growing up, and learned about this. And I always enjoyed it. And by the time I was 12, I was already working the sewing machine and cutting and doing different things in terms of manufacturing and repairing and remodeling, which we've always done. Change, please. And then, you know, me sort of looking at the business side. Okay, we need to understand business. So off to business and marketing school. Next slide. And then coming back to Peterborough, and this was, by this time, it was early 1990s, and there was a lot more social sensitivity and a real push for environmental issues. And what I really wanted to look at was understanding how does fur fit in with environmental issues. So took an environmental studies degree at Trent University with a big focus on native studies and public policy. Next. From there, I actually went to a company called North American Fur Auctions, which is actually the old Hudson Bay Fur Trading Company. So by the time I was in my early 30s, I was traveling around the world as an international fur trader, oddly enough. Next slide. And a big part of my market was Eastern Europe. So I spent a lot of time, 7 years basically, in Russia and the Ukraine and Eastern Europe. So watching, watching what's happening today is really painful, because I have a lot of friends and colleagues over there. Next slide. And then I spent 11 years as executive director of the Fur Institute of Canada, which is a national nonprofit group that works with all sectors of the trade, but also, most importantly, with governments that regulate it, federal, provincial, territorial, and wildlife biologists and veterinarians that are involved in looking at various aspects of how the industry functions, and played a major role. And we did a lot of data sharing. We ran Canada's national trap research and testing program to meet international standards. And in fact, the results of those tests filter its way down into provincial harvesting regulations that are still continuing to evolve today. And then I ended up back at the auction house in Toronto and in international marketing, and spent a lot of my time in Asia, but also, most importantly, next slide, please, where I learned a great deal was supplying the world's largest fashion houses in North America and Europe. And a big part of what I did with my experience was bring together a sustainability and traceability program to help them understand where the product was coming from, what were the aspects around it, regulatory, welfare, environmental, social, supporting rural, local, indigenous people, and was part of a network all around the world. So those experiences were very interesting to help me understand a lot of where these brands were certainly pushing and continue to, as Scott was just outlining with some of the brands that they carry. Next slide. So then in 2020, I ended up coming back to the company, to Cahill's in Peterborough after 25 years with a lot of wind in my sails. I thought, okay, time to settle down. I was traveling probably 4 to 6 months a year, and really focus on what I really believed in, and local, and get back to producing interesting product. So next slide. One of the things that we were really looking at was, well, of course, and at this time, not only was it COVID, but of course, decades of animal rights activity that really impacted people's comfort and understanding of fur. So as our company and the industry was on a massive downward slide, we still had a lot of people that loved their product, and we know it keeps them warm, and we know it's got a long track record in sustainability, in my experience in animal welfare and social issues around it as well. So next slide. So then this is where, next slide, this is where I really wanted to look at what is it that people really do care about. Next. And certainly animal welfare was huge, and we were getting calls from people all the time that had these fur coats. What do I do? But that is obviously a critical aspect of the use of any clothing, but specifically our products. Next, environmental issues. And while I know a lot of people talk about it more than they actually do, this is important, and it's always been important to us. Next. Local livelihood. So during COVID times, people really wanted to support local and keep businesses going. So the first thing we did was we actually made face masks for about a year, because we have tailors and people that actually, we have sewing machines. And so we sourced the cloth that were 2 percentage points off medical grade, and we made, and for every one we sold, we donated one to into the hospital. So we really felt good about that. But then it became down to, again, people's interest in upcycling and repurposing, and they were just calling, what can I do with my the fur coats we have hanging in our closet, because 1/3 of all homes have a fur coat hanging in the closet, interestingly enough, in Canada. Next. People care about slow fashion versus fast fashion, and back to what Scott was saying about not selling cheap, not selling fast, but buy things that are better, buy things that are going to last you a long period of time. And what the things that we make last decades, and if not generations. So that's where we felt we were on a good track. Next. And this is really where the idea for Further was born. Seeing all of these pieces together, felt that we really needed to package this up and be able to tell that story to people and make them understand it, and get continued use out of what they have in their closets. And next slide. So what we're doing is we're taking vintage furs that could be 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, providing that leather still in good shape, we can completely repurpose them into something else. Next. So back one. Yeah. So clothing and fashions are one. So what we're doing now is a lot of the furs, the two items on the left are fur then goes on to the inside. And then you've got either a silk taffeta, cashmere, waterproof cashmere on the outsides. But you use that fur that keeps you warm. And these furs that are keeping people warm, in some cases, are going into their third generation of use, which really is incredible. And then going into home decor, so pillows, blankets, and other little fashion items. And the one in the middle is now a collaboration we have with a Indigenous designer out of the Northwest Territories named Darcy Moses, who's doing embroidery work, and we're collaborating together to make a number of different products as well. So, and all of this, all the pillows and blankets are made here at our shop in Peterborough. I have my white coat on in the shop, working on some products, but also it's about the hand craftsmanship. And if it's not here, it's in a couple of small workshops in Toronto and Montreal. So it's really about repurposing that vintage into various things, local craftsmanship, and again, contemporary luxury, which is what this is. Next. So, the demand for further, what do we see? So that's the fur service and the remodeling category. Next slide, please. So what we've seen is we've seen a 50% growth each over the last 2 years in this category of our business. So we are now reaching out to Ottawa, through Toronto, into the United States, into the Muskokas, and people are just finding these coats in their closet. They've always wanted to do something with them. And we're out there with our message, our story, and products that they can see something that resonates with them, that they can get further use out of what it is they own. Next. And we're still on track for at least a 30% growth again this year. So it's really interesting. And I said at the last presentation I gave at Rob Show that if in the fur business we can see some growth, then anybody can in their industry, that's for sure. But it's about finding that link. Next. So it's really about developing that further brand in itself and telling that story. Next. And then developing the collection. I think the picture's taking over a little bit of this, but it's building a collection, the fashion and accessories. Next slide, home decor. Next slide. And then again, the Darcy Moses. So, in summary, I think one of the things that we have to do to look at our own businesses, we have to sort of detach ourselves and re-look at our business from a different angle and evaluate the business's strengths and opportunities around what your beliefs are. So next. And really looking at what is your purpose and your principles and the products and services that you offer, and how does that align with a circular economy, with sustainability, with being responsible in your community. Next. So yeah, again, looking at those key aspects. Next. And really we think that to really take this new philosophy that you can find in your own business, you really have to package it up into a brand and build something that people can resonate with, that's aligned with their values and their interests. And at the end of the day, you have to get out and tell your story. When you tell your story and you have these alignments and you can find those people that are in alignment with what you have, then you're going to build a sustainable business. And what we're seeing is we've been able to align what we have, our skills, our story, because we do believe that that people that have these products care about the products. They care about the animals. They care about the environment. They also care about staying warm, and they're willing to invest in building something new that can continue to be part of them, that has a very, very light footprint on the environment.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. That was wonderful and inspiring. And I'm going to just move forward. We've got Norm Cahill, Norm Lamoth of Woodley Farms next, who is I'm going to stop share and pass that over to you, Norm. And thanks everybody for being here. I hope you can stick around. We'll have a chance for questions at the end. Here we go. How are you doing, Norm? Are you ready to go?
I'm all set. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks, Rob and Jackie, for inviting me to be part of this great group. And great to hear from Rob and Scott as well, and how you've pivoted your businesses to become more sustainable. And those are difficult choices sometimes, and sometimes they're driven by what society is looking for. So really interested to hear that. So I'm Norm Lamott. I'm from Woodley Farms. We farm just outside of Peterborough in Cavan. 6th generation farmer, formerly hog operators, and we've kind of pivoted our business. One as a result of a fairly dramatic fire that we had here on the farm, but also just with my own interest in soil health and regenerating the soil. We're a 500-acre diverse farm. We farm primarily corn, soy, wheat, oats, and a little bit of barley. And we have quite a bit of diversity on the farm. About 10 to 25% of all our acreage is either in forages or hay, woodlots, grasslands, and some pollinator gardens. We also have a compost facility, and I'll talk a little bit more about that from the regenerative side. We've built a passive solar greenhouse where we use just the sun's energy to provide the heat to sustain the greenhouse through the coldest months of the year. And most recently, we've added livestock to our operation. And that's really sort of closes the circle on what we see as a circular agriculture economy, and using the livestock to graze a lot of the excess residues in our fields, and also an additional income stream from the meat products. We have a 1,500 tap maple syrup operation, and we certified that organically approximately 5 years ago. So our journey to soil health and my whole interest in creating a circular economy started back in 2015, and there's a picture there on the left of my son. And Ontario Soil and Crop at the time had a program called Soil Your Undies. And the concept behind the program was you took a pair of clean underwear, you buried them in the soil, and 2 months later you returned to that location, dug up the underwear, and if you had a good, strong microbial population in the soil, those underwear should have been completely decimated. The cotton would have been consumed by the microbes and the fungi. And unfortunately, in our case, we found that the underwear were still very much intact. And that really got me asking a lot of questions about how we're farming, why was the soil so what I would call tired, and what can we do to improve that? So through the use of technologies and my inquisitive mind, we started looking at all aspects from soil fertility to soil health indices, to looking at things like variability in the fields. And if you look at that middle picture, in 2018, we flew this field with a drone and captured how much variability existed in the field, and how could we manage that in a more sustainable way. If we were applying fertilizer and indiscriminately broadcasting it across an entire field, were we placing it in the right areas? Did the crop need it in all of those areas? We're a large research farm for a bunch of organizations here in the province, and they're helping us identify how we can manage our fertilizer use more effectively, but also just assisting us in making smarter decisions at the farm level. So our philosophies here on the farm are numerous. First, we looked at increasing the rotations. So typically here in Ontario, we're growing corn and soy, or corn, soy, and wheat. And what we found is by adding cereals to the rotations, we're able to increase the use of cover crops. So a cover crop is a crop that we plant that we don't intend to harvest. And what that cover crop does is it keeps green growing matter in the field 11 months of the year, as opposed to just half of the year. And those living roots feed the microbes in the soil. We reduce the amount of tillage that we're doing on the farm. And again, tillage is a CO2 emitter, but it also increases the risk of erosion, both from wind and rain events. We've increased the amount of soil organic amendments, and we're bringing those in from off the farm. And as I mentioned, most recently we've added a flock of sheep to the operation. So all of our decisions at the field level are driven by data. We collect soil samples from all of our fields on a regular basis. All of our soil sampling is GPS guided, so we can go back to those same areas every 4 years and see the changes in the soil profiles. Sometimes in a field like the one that you see on the right, we have elevation changes that change the profile of those soil characteristics, and we'll manage each of those areas differently. Our tractors are GPS guided, and we're able to variable rate all of our fertility throughout the growing cycle. We bring in quite a bit of off-farm amendments, both from a fertility standpoint, but also to increase our organic matter. The picture that you see on the left there is a product called biochar. It's created using waste materials such as forest biomass and converting that material into a pure carbon state. We're able to sequester 2.8 tons of carbon per 1 ton of biochar that we produce here on the farm. In the middle picture that you see there are municipal biosolids. So again, we're looking at waste products that are created here locally and introducing those to our agriculture cycle and recycling those products. A lot of these products have good fertility, but they also have some organic matter that help improve our soil health. The picture on the right is a mushroom compost. So mushroom compost and mushroom production facilities typically use a combination of straw and chicken manure as the substrate on which they grow their mushrooms. And after about 7 or 8 crops, that materials is essentially a waste for them. And so the agriculture sector has repurposed that material in bringing it to the field and applying it as a fertility source. One of the programs that we're most proud about in terms of our circularity is the use of waste materials that are collected at the municipal level. On the left-hand side, you see leaf and yard waste, and those are the brown bags that you put out at your roadside. We receive those materials from both the county and the local municipality, and we bring them to the farm. We churn them in this large machine, which basically breaks them down and puts them into a bit more of a soil textured material. We'll turn those materials for about 300 days here on the farm, and we're an approved waste site facility to receive those materials, to windrow them on the farm, and then we also have approvals to store them at our various locations and field apply them. We consume on farm approximately 400 tons of that material on an annual basis, and we're always looking to expand that program. And just to put it in perspective, those 400 tons would cover about 10% of our land on an annual basis. We're a research farm, so we're always learning, we're always teaching, and we're always trying to improve everything that we do, both above the ground and below the ground. And you see some researchers here walking in some fairly tall crops, and Ted Taylor from Ontario Soil and Crop is down in a pit, and we're just looking at things like water infiltration and root structures and how plants are able to achieve their maximum growth potential by scavenging for nutrients in their different soil profiles. As we think about our long-term vision as a farm, I mean, I classify farms in 3 different categories. You have conventional farms where there's maximum tillage, minimum rotations. We have sustainable farms that are in a transition between conventional and regenerative. And then you have regenerative farming, where we're looking to improve the soil, increase organic matter so that future generations can use those lands in a more sustainable way. On our farm, we're always looking to reduce our carbon footprint, and we do that primarily through the conversion of waste materials to a fertilizer. We're also looking at other alternatives for taking local waste that's produced here. Forest biomass is something that's very interesting to us, and taking that material and converting it both to an energy source here at the farm, and also some other byproducts that we might be able to use, such as bio oils or biofuels. Our journey to net negative happens through sequestration. Our compost program sequesters about 0.5 ton of CO2 emissions per ton of compost manufactured. And as we move forward, we're quite excited about electrifying as many things on the farm here as we possibly can. We've recently purchased an electric car, and the picture that you see there on the right is a full-size electric tractor. We're slated to be one of the first farms in Ontario to receive a full-scale electric tractor for testing purposes, and we hope to receive that here in the near future. We have a few solar installations on the farm presently, and we'll be installing this fall a larger solar installation where we're going to offset the majority of the energy use here on the farm. So what does the future look like for us? Well, we're looking at all waste materials and their conversion to useful byproducts, primarily fertilizer. Here on our farm and here in Eastern Canada particularly, the majority of our nitrogen fertilizer still comes from Russia, and the transportation that's involved in moving that material around, and the production of that material, which is primarily derived from natural gas, has a tremendously high CO2 emissions factor in agriculture. And so we're going to look at using on-farm residues such as manure, stover, crop residues from the field, and taking those materials and converting them to a variety of energy sources, as well as byproducts that we can utilize as a fertilizer source. We're hoping to reduce our fertilizer dependency by upwards of 80% here over the next 5 years through this process. And as we scale up our waste management program, we certainly feel that we can achieve that. There'll also be some other factors such as heat that we can use to dry crops, as well as some energy that we can convert to electricity as well. So I kept that nice and short so that we could be respectful for everyone's time. But again, I really thank everyone for participating in today's event and for hearing our story. And there's my contact information if anyone ever wants to reach out or have a tour of our facilities.
Thank you, Norm. I love these presentations. I hope everyone else is enjoying them as much as I do. I find the whole circular economy thing just ripe with innovation and opportunity and collaboration. It's a really interesting space, and it's so interesting to see how unique it is to each business. So I'm glad there's still quite a few people here, and I really appreciate that. And I'm hoping now that maybe we can ask some questions or make some comments. Does anybody have a question? I'm wondering if Natalie can help me with some of this.
Sure, Jackie. I can look for hands that are raised or comments in the chat. We did have a question early on from Sheila Cook, which Rob addressed in the chat, but the question was related to waste and healthcare. And Rob has provided a resource there in the chat if folks are also concerned about that issue. Obviously, it's a big one, especially through COVID. I don't see any other questions for now. Let me see. Lots of great comments, great presentations. Everyone's nice, inspired. If folks do have a comment or a question, just feel free to raise your hand or speak up.
Well, they're all still here, so that's a good thing. Everybody is still so very curious. I just want to thank our presenters. It's been really fascinating for me, as I indicated. Rob and Scott and Norm, you really are great leaders and sharers for our community. And whenever we can hear you speak and share your story, as Rob had indicated, is so important. I think it sort of breathes life into these ideas for people and makes them realize that they can do them and get inspired by them even more. You know, I wanna again thank our presenters so much, and I also want to thank our sponsors, which are the City of Peterborough, the Peterborough County, and who are program sponsors at Green Economy Peterborough, and HSBC, who has sponsored this event. Big thank yous for allowing us to share this with our community. I will be making this presentation available on YouTube, so I will send that out to everybody and to those who weren't able to make it. And I just wanted to let you know that Green Economy Peterborough is always recruiting, and please, if you want to find out more about our network and program, please contact me. You can visit greeneconomypeterborough.ca, and you can book a little chat with me, and I'm happy to share with you more. I think that's it. I am just going to stop my record. Oh, Rob, yes, please, Rob.
Not a question. I think we're all running long, and I actually have to jump into my next meeting. Thank you for hosting. And there was a comment from somebody about feeling a little bit insignificant. And I don't think you should. Everybody, every small step counts. But I have to echo that same comment. Listening to Rob and Norm and Scott share their stories, I feel a little insignificant myself. So hats off to you for actually making it happen, for being so vested in sustainability and circularity and bringing it into your business, and you know, making those hard decisions was a comment that came up, and I really appreciate it, guys, for spending some time with us, but also for doing what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.